Bishop on Air, back at it. Hopefully you guys had an enjoyable weekend. Beautiful weather here in central Illinois. If you've got cicadas, that might have been a bit of an annoyance, but it was just gorgeous here. I don't have a bunch of cicadas in my backyard, but I've got these buffalo gnats that are just driving me insane. I don't know what to do about it. But I was able to take some time and just relax and enjoy the just wonderful weather. I had a kayak trip that the wife and I took. Some of you may have seen this video I quickly put together. This is on Sugar Creek, which is connected to Lake Springfield. There's a kayak launch in Chatham, just south of Springfield. And the water was higher than we'd seen it in the past. And there's this area where the cypress trees are. You go and it's almost like you're transported to someplace in the swamplands. It's just wonderfully relaxing, very enjoyable. And I'm just so happy we got the kayaks and some nice weather. Gonna have to take the kayaks out elsewhere and see where we can experience similar types of scenery. But yeah, the cypress trees, very nice. That's full. All right. So yeah, if you followed me over the weekend, you surely saw that. But it was just a good, relaxing Saturday. And then, of course, all the yard work that goes into a Sunday. Gosh, I feel like I'm going to have to start mowing the yard at least twice a week now. But hey, back at it. And a lot to get to here with Bishop on Air, including the latest in what's going on at the Illinois State House. We'll also tackle some of what former President Donald Trump had to say at the National Rifle Association, and a segment that we didn't get to on Friday to talk about Cook County Sheriff Tom Dart wanting to go after firearms that he says are illegally being possessed by tens of thousands of Illinoisans, let alone those in Chicago. So plenty to get to here with Bishop on Air. Thanks for joining us each and every weekday morning. And brief breather, back at it here with Bishop on Air. Some of the headlines from last week out of Cook County had the sheriff there, Tom Dart, talk about tens of thousands of people across the county and across the state that he says are in possession of firearms illegally. And he's proposing some things to try to go after those guns. This, as you've got the Cook County State's Attorney, Kim Foxx, wanting to not have gun confiscation or drug confiscation after unrelated traffic stops. So how do you handle that? A little bit of cognitive dissonance with some of the county elected officials in Cook County. Welcome back to Bishop on Air. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Join us each and every weekday morning as we break down things happening in and around the area. I know a lot of you are here for Second Amendment news. I have been checking the U.S. Supreme Court's order list. They have yet to publish that. We're waiting to see if they put out an order list this morning to indicate whether or not they're going to take the litigation against Illinois' gun ban and Maryland's gun ban. A lot of those were put into conference last week, and we got indication that if they put out an order list on Monday, that could give us insight into how they move forward with this. Either they reject the cases, they relist them, or what exactly they do. If they take the cases, if they consolidate the cases. So we'll do what we can to try to update you on that. But the latest, of course, with Cook County, you've got Sheriff Tom Dart talking about what he says are illegal firearms in the hands of people illegally, and how he wants to ensure that law enforcement can go after those firearms. Here is Tom Dart from last week.
There's probably no issue that law enforcement and our society rightfully obsesses more about than gun violence. We have to. The numbers here in the city of Chicago are horrible. We all know that. the question people are always asking, and it's a great question, where do these guns come from? Where are they coming from? And studies have been done. They show they come from primarily within our state, but they come from other states as well. And the question then is, well, how do they get their hands on these guns, the people who are doing the shootings? Are they stolen? Are they from gun shows? Are they from straw purchasers? All these things are thrown out there, valid questions. Law enforcement has strategies that we've put in place over the years, but anybody in law enforcement would tell you that even with those strategies, all the tools we've used, we barely scratched the surface with getting at the people who are behind these guns. What, though, on the other hand, if I were to tell you that as I stand here now, I know where tens of thousands of illegal guns are right now. I know who has them, and I know their address that the guns are at. And yet we're doing nothing about it.
So he goes on to talk about individuals who may have had FOID cards revoked or orders of protection against them or are charged with felonies. And he says that they've got to do what they can to go after these guns.
And there's been some efforts made to deal with it, but the efforts clearly are not enough. And so what we did is we put together a report that laid out all the data, all of the numbers, and rather clearly laid out the case that if we do not change what we're doing right now, that in 3 years we're going to go from having, we're going to go from having 83,000 illegal guns in people's hands in houses to 93,000. And this number will exponentially keep increasing. It adds about 150 new people a month. And so this is something clearly that's not going in the right direction, and clearly are cases that we all would agree are ones we need to address. Why are the revocations that we're talking about, why are these guns being revoked from people? The largest category of the 85,000, about 32,000 because of a felony indictment. I think we can all agree we don't want that person around a gun. 30,000 are people with a mental health issue, a serious mental health issue. And then 27,000 are people who have an order of protection against them. Collectively, those categories, I think we can all agree we don't want people having guns. But yet, the vast majority of our state is not being able to keep up with these numbers. And so what we did was years ago, back in 2013, we put together our own gun team that spends every minute of every day going to houses of people who revoke guns, knocking on the door, talking to them, accounting for the guns, taking possession of many of them. We've taken possession of over 1,500 guns. This is just a small amount from the last year. Another 3,500 guns, we've been able to take possession of them and give them to someone who legally can possess them, who's related to them, or so on.
Clearly, the sheriff in Cook County talking about what he sees as a problem of too many firearms in the streets, held by individuals who shouldn't have them. But I tell you, I mean, you look at the crime stats from just this past weekend, what was it, like 30-plus shot, one killed. But then you've got video like this that's being shared around of downtown Chicago where people are walking around with knives and getting into what looks like knife fights. It's just remarkable. Apparently nobody injured in that particular situation, but still clearly something that is more of a focus of a problem with crime, not necessarily a problem with firearms per se. I imagine a lot of people would look at it differently. But the sheriff, he says, more needs to be done, collaborating with other law enforcement entities across the state, having the state police get involved, having task forces. You've got the proposal at the State House that would possibly free up $10 million to fund this type of program, to have police go and confiscate firearms from individuals who had their FOID card revoked or denied, or who have different types of prohibitors against them. You've also got the measure at the State House, Karina's bill, which hasn't advanced yet, but there's still time. There's 1 week left of scheduled legislative session. But Karina's bill would essentially say that law enforcement are required to confiscate firearms from individuals who are the subject of an order of protection. Right now, that individual who's the subject of an order of protection can give their firearms to their cousin across the state if that cousin has a FOID card, right? But Karina's bill would essentially say, no, you have to have law enforcement get a warrant and then go and serve that warrant. And even the governor has said that that could put law enforcement in a tenuous situation. So what does Sheriff Tom Dart have to say about what he thinks needs to happen?
Real world is law enforcement is wildly under-resourced, specifically in this area. And so as a result of that, what we have been pitching for over a year now down in Springfield is to get resources to the state police for them to disperse it. And as someone has pointed out to me, it's very rare that people go down to Springfield and say, I need more money, I need more money. We're not asking for any money. We're asking for money to be appropriated to the state police, who then can disperse it. And they can disperse it in the way that they find to be fit. I would strongly suggest to you that some departments have the capacity to do it on their own. Other ones, you're fooling yourself. You're just kidding yourself. This problem won't go away. In those areas, we need to think more of like a regional task force model. We use it for other things. Fund a task force that have officers from different agencies that come together, who are trained, who go and do just this. So this is something, folks, that I don't need to sit and talk, the tragedies can occur. Tragedies already have occurred. Tragedies already have occurred with this, because people have not gone and gotten the guns out of houses.
So again, Sheriff Tom Dart, with his ideas, more resources from state taxpayers to go to state police for a task force of sorts to work with other law enforcement organizations to then go and confiscate firearms that they say are illegally in the hands of people who shouldn't have them. Meanwhile, when it comes to firearms, here's a headline in a post on X from ABC7 Chicago. Strong reaction to a proposed policy the ABC7I team was first to report on, a plan to not charge gun crimes if the firearms were found during non-public safety traffic stops. This is an initiative from Cook County State's Attorney Kim Fox, who's on her way out. She's not running for re-election. So you've got a Democrat and a Republican that are going to go head-to-head in November to take that spot. But this proposal to not charge gun crimes or drug crimes from a non-public safety traffic stop getting panned by people even within the Democratic Party, including Comptroller Susana Mendoza, who's been very vocal about crime in the city of Chicago. She, if you recall, had some strong words for Mayor Brandon Johnson, who indicated that he was going to go to the funeral of that fallen police officer, that slain cop, who the parents didn't want the governor or Mayor Johnson to attend, and Susana Mendoza really being vocal on X about her feelings on just crime and how it's being handled. But here she says to this idea, this quote, draft policy, the headline, Fox draft policy won't prosecute certain cases if from non-public safety traffic stops. She says more like a daft policy. Chicago and Cook County residents deserve a state's attorney's office that will stand up for victims' rights and work relentlessly to get illegal guns out of the hands of criminals. This awful policy does the opposite and should be tabled. So clearly a lot of back and forth and discussion about how exactly Cook County is going to combat crime. Is it about more community investment, as the mayor indicates, putting more money into community-based programs, or is it having prosecutors actually prosecute certain crimes more so than they have in the past? Clearly, the debate is going to continue. It is Bishop on Air. Thanks for hanging out. Each and every weekday morning, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us, won't you? it's the final week of scheduled session at the Illinois State House, and plenty to talk about when it comes to what's left to tackle. And of course, you've got the ongoing budget negotiations. Will we see a budget? Will you, the taxpayers, get to see the proposed budget before it passes? Having been on the ground reporting at the State House for the past decade, it's always been among the last things they advance, and you don't really get the details until the final days. So where are we at right now? Tons of legislation having passed. And you can follow this yourself at ilga.gov. If you go to ilga.gov, by the way, welcome back, Bishop on air. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. And if you go to ILGA, which is the Illinois General Assembly website, and go to legislative reports, we'll just take a look to see just how much legislation they've advanced so far this session. So we'll go to House bills that passed both houses, right? See this right here under legislative reports, House bills that passed both houses. Click on that and it pops up a report, and you can scroll down and see all of these measures that passed last week, the 16th, the 15th, the 17th, and so on. But if you scroll all the way down, you can see that the House bills that have passed both chambers, 101. All right, so 101 bills have passed both chambers out of the Illinois House. What about Senate bills that passed both houses? Click on that report, and you'll get all of the Senate bills that passed both chambers, and they're looking at 78. So 101 plus 78, so far you're looking at 179 different measures that have passed that could be sent to the governor that he will act on this summer. But listen, they've got, today, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. The 24th is when they're scheduled to adjourn. Now, they have until May 31st to pass measures that they want to enact immediately, but the deadline of May 31st, that's when they have to pass it with simple majorities in both chambers. If they want to pass anything after that, it's going to take super majorities to pass those things. So clearly, with something as big as the budget that could still possibly increase taxes by $1 billion. If you recall, the governor proposed $1 billion in tax increases back in February when he proposed the largest spending plan in state history of $52.7 billion. But then a couple of weeks ago, his administration put out a memo to state agencies saying, hey, there might be a deficit of $600 million, or rather $800 million in the budget. So you might have to find some reduction to use. So if you do miss anything, you'll be back at it. But regardless, a lot of money being proposed. And we talked previously as well of all of the different types of priorities there are. They passed a bill to spend $68 million on student teacher stipends. It was subject to appropriation, but if they appropriate it, then it's $68 million. They've got, measures to help with farmers in certain urban areas, and those farmers could get subsidies. Well, it's subject to appropriation, millions of dollars. Different types of programs like, fostering curriculum in public schools to focus on climate science, and that would have to have money appropriated to it. You've got, program after program after program after program that they're wanting to create in the new fiscal year, but it's subject to appropriation. How are you going to balance all of these programs with, the amount of revenue that is not necessarily guaranteed? Right? Plus, you've got $140 billion in unfunded pension liability. You've got the infrastructure issues. You've got contract increases for state employees. You've got the governor wanting to spend capital dollars on building new prisons. You've got the governor wanting to start a grocery initiative, $10 million in that. You've got the increased spending for K through 12, $350 million. You've got money that the governor wants to increase for early childhood, creating a new agency for early childhood. That alone is $13 million additional. So again, all of these programs stacking up, and we've got 5 days now for the legislature to come to terms and to pass a balanced budget. But it's not the only thing that they're advancing. Again, go to thecentersquare.com, celebrating 5 years, by the way, which is pretty awesome. So, join the support, donate, help us stay on the ground, and continue reporting what's going on at the State House. But some of the headlines you could see here, some legislators, they want to make sure that, it's not all about spending. Some want to make sure that teachers who have a sexual relationship with students, even if they're 18, it should still be a crime. Right now in Illinois, apparently it's not. So some are looking to get a House bill that did pass the House advanced out of the Senate that would hold those adults in authority accountable if they have some kind of sexual relationship with somebody, even if they're 18 years old. You've got other measures that are being talked about that did advance, including revisions to Illinois' biometric information privacy law. If you're familiar with this, BIPA, the Biometric Information Privacy Act, it's a measure that was passed back in 2008. And it essentially says that if somebody is not giving their explicit permission to have their fingerprint cataloged or their face scan cataloged, then they can sue and get money. One of the first instances of this was, I think, Six Flags, where a kid was going to Six Flags and they said, hey, give us your fingerprints and you'll be able to get better access to Six Flags. And well, he did that without getting his parents' permission, and they sued, and they got a settlement out of that, I believe. But then they get to other cases. Remember, Facebook was sued for violating Illinois' Biometric Information Privacy Act. They settled, and I don't know if you guys got a check, but a lot of people got a check for like $490 some odd. Google also settled a BIPA lawsuit, so people got money for that as well. I believe Snapchat and a variety of other social media companies. So it was clear that this law was being used by law firms to go after businesses for big bucks. And then you had a case concerning White Castle, the burger joint. This case went all the way up to the Illinois Supreme Court, where the Illinois Supreme Court said, listen, I mean, the way the law is crafted right now, an employee who had to use their thumb scan to clock in, for each instance that individual clocked in, the way the law is written says that they can sue the employer and get $1,000 each time. Well, if that was the case, even the Illinois Supreme Court said it would be a business killer because it could mean that White Castle is having to face $17 billion in penalties. After getting that and kicking back around in the courts, it wasn't that high of a penalty, but still a very punitive penalty. And state legislators, they did ultimately pass a law, still pending the governor's action, that would essentially change BIPA from being a per instance violation to a per individual violation. So clearly that's an issue that's ongoing. So there's a lot of things that legislators are tackling, some things they may not tackle. A bill that defines woman has been proposed by the Illinois Freedom Caucus, but that's a bunch of Republicans in the super minority. Will this get anywhere? Not quite, but that measure has been proposed. They held a news conference with the Illinois Freedom Caucus last week, but they also were asked about Springfield Pride Fest. It's the LGBTQ Pride festival that happens in downtown Springfield every year. And what was interesting was there's two state agencies that were the top tier sponsors for the Pride Fest, and in particular, questions about a teen drag show where teens were given a goodie bag for an impromptu drag show. And the state having a couple of state agencies sponsor that rubbed these Republicans the wrong way. So that's a story you can go see at thecentersquare.com. But you've also got this story about prosecutors charging 6 individuals out of Chicago with faking robberies to get U.S. visas for victims. And that's an interesting story you can catch as well at thecentersquare.com. All of this while lawmakers also considering changes to pensions. And in particular, police and firefighter pensions. They want to set up a DROP program. It's a deferred retirement option program for law enforcement and firefighters. If, say, they're at retirement age and they want to still work, they can go into this separate program, and they say that it'll help out the pension funds, but others calling it a sweetener, and municipalities pushing back, saying we don't know the actual taxpayer cost to all of this. So a lot of stuff's going to happen in the final 5 days here of legislative session. If you want to follow along with it, go to thecentersquare.com/Illinois, thecentersquare.com/Illinois. Sign up for the newsletter, donate, keep us on the ground there, and we'll do what we can to keep you updated here each and every weekday morning with Bishop on Air. Greatly appreciate you guys. Again, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. Yeah, I know I was a little late to the game today. It's because it's a late start at the State House. They don't come in until noon, so it gave me a little bit of wiggle room this morning. Shout out to those who are in the chat room: Christopher Titus, Tattooed Squirrel, Randall, Warsaw. I saw your message earlier about they're going to drop those orders out of the U.S. Supreme Court at 9:30. We'll see what ultimately happens there. Is it 9:30 Eastern time, or is it 9:30 our time? I'm just going to go ahead and refresh here. Let's see what we get. Oh, there we go. Well, let's see what we got here. All right. Gotta love that. Let's do what we can to break some news. All right, the U.S. Supreme Court issuing their order list, and I have not taken a look at this myself, but we're going to do it together here with Bishop on Air as we pull this up. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. All right, so before we get to it, background. Illinois has multiple cases challenging Illinois' gun and magazine ban. Plaintiffs in the lower courts, in the Southern District, in the Northern District, those went different ways on preliminary issues, not on the merits, on initial requests to block the law. In the Southern District, that was granted. Then it went up to the appeals court, and the appeals court said, no, the state's likely to succeed. Well, plaintiffs, they went to the U.S. Supreme Court and said, hey, can you intervene in this? This is getting a little hairy. So the orders that we're going to review here are from a U.S. Supreme Court conference, because as you had preliminary issues being requested for the U.S. Supreme Court to review, they went ahead and took these several cases out of Illinois and a case out of Maryland and put them into the conference. And a conference, as we heard from Hannah Hill from the National Foundation for Gun Rights, she said last week when we chatted with her, the conference is when they get together and talk about these cases.
Conference is basically when the justices essentially sit down around a conference table and take the first look at cases, officially discuss the cases that have been brought before them for appeal. Typically, a case that they end up taking will have been discussed a few times at several different conferences. That process is called relisting it. So they could decide today to reject the case immediately. They could decide to accept the case and grant certiorari immediately, and then we would move into the briefing and oral argument stage. Or they could, as I mentioned, they could relist it. They could relist it. They could punt it multiple times if they wanted to do that. Just by way of putting that into perspective, Bruin itself was relisted 4 different times before they officially granted cert.
So clearly, there's a lot to be said as to what these possible orders are. So going through, and some of you have already taken a look here, Bianchi, Dominic et al. V. Brown, Attorney General of Maryland. The petition for writ of certiorari before judgment is denied. So let's see if we can find that on the Bianchi. There we go. So Bianchi, that's the Maryland case. That is denied. So the petition for writ of certiorari before judgment is denied. What else we got? I don't see the Barnett case. Let's see here. Barnett. I'm not seeing it. Raoul. No. Illinois. That's just one case. So what do we got here? Do we not have the Barnett case being considered? Let's see if we can pull up some of the other ones. Man. Well. Anybody else seeing some lists here? Looking at the live chat as we go through this, other than the Bianchi case that was denied before, the final judgment, and I think that's a pretty important issue here. Before final judgment, that's because these cases are in preliminary stages. So what's going to happen with say the Southern Illinois case? Well, that could mean that the Southern Illinois case is going to march right on ahead. So I'm going to go and look at a docket search with the U.S. Supreme Court, look up the Barnett case, and let's see, Caleb Barnett versus petitioner Kwame Raoul, and do they relist it? I'm not seeing it relisted as of today. The most recent action was reply on April 30th, but in the orders, we don't see that. So let's just kind of go through and pour all of this down here. No, let's see. So just follow with me, just scrolling through, see what kind of headlines we can get out of this order list. And again, if you guys see anything, be sure to, comment. I did search for Raoul. I didn't see Raoul in this list. Let's see. We can also probably do Kelly. Nope, there's only one instance of Kelly. What about Pritzker? Nope, I don't see Pritzker either. And I'm just going to try Barnett again. Nope. I see Barrett, but not Barnett. So, just apparently, but it might be relisted, and the relisting may have not happened here. So, cert denied for all of these cases that you can see. Tons of cases, by the way. I mean, it's incredible how much the U.S. Supreme Court's asked to take on things. But this could be good news because, as Hannah Hill told us last week, seeing this on Monday's list probably would have been problematic.
It's pure speculation. But I would be nervous about that. I think it's a lot easier to decide immediately to reject a case than it is to decide to take it. And for that reason, if they decided today on the case's disposition, I would be a little nervous about that. Experts that know more about the court than I do, Mark Smith of Four Boxes Diner, he is predicting that we will get at least a couple of relists on this one. And he's also predicting that we may have reason to hope that they'll take it eventually. I definitely hope he's right on that. And certainly he's more of an expert on the Supreme Court than I am. At this point, we know they've had this case on their radar for a while. Last year, we brought this same case to them on an emergency basis a couple of times.
So there's been a lot that the U.S. Supreme Court has been asked to tackle with these cases. But I think what at least we can determine from this list, not including the Barnett case and rejecting the Maryland case, is the Southern District case continues. And looks like you've got the possibility of Judge Stephen McGlynn in the Southern District of Illinois taking up that case on the merits. So we'll be tracking that for you as we do each and every time there's a change in the docket. So appreciate you guys sticking around. And in addition to the live show here with Bishop on Air, so we'll see you sooner than later. All right. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And we'll be back at it. Appreciate you guys. Again, thank you for being here. I got to go. Email me, bishoponair@gmail.com, if you see something I missed from that list, other than the Bianchi case being denied cert. I don't see any of the cases from Illinois, but maybe I'm missing something. If you see it, hit me up, bishoponair@gmail.com. Just not seeing it on that list, man. Habeas corpus denied, mandamus denied, rehearings denied. Yeah. So it's a 6-page list, dozens of bills, dozens of lawsuits on there. Wow. Yep. Phil, appreciate you. Brandon, Warsaw, John, CNT Designs, Randall. Who else we got in the chat? Keith, Tenebris, Benjamin. You guys have yourselves a wonderful day. Phil, John, Titus, Christopher, AJ, Oscar, Mike, Warsaw. All right, I got to get out of here, guys. We'll see you tomorrow.